Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second official episode of the Be Here Today podcast. My name is Julia Bedell. I'm your host, and today we are going to be diving into all the ins and outs of adoption. So, as always, before I get into today's episode, I just want to thank you for choosing to be here today. I'm so excited to talk about this topic. It's one that I feel like some of you guys know about me, but I have never gone really in depth about it, and I felt like this podcast was the perfect platform for me to do so. I have all my notes written down on my phone. It's kind of informal, but I feel like we're just besties. It's like I wrote down in my notes app to remind myself of things that I wanted to talk to you guys about. I thought adoption was the perfect topic to start off this podcast with. Even though this is technically my second episode, my first one was just kind of an overview, and now we can start to get into the nitty-gritty of every single little detail about me. Something that I feel like you guys don't know about me is that I'm adopted, and I feel like it is such a unique experience that I would really love to talk about. I know that some of you guys can relate, and other people are just interested in hearing more about what that process was like on both the adoptee and the adoption side. So I don't know if I'm going to include it in this episode, but I definitely want to bring my sister on here at one point to talk to her about her adoption experience because it was different from mine, and also bring my parents on to talk to them because they adopted me and my sister. So they went through the adoption process twice, and I just feel like it is such a unique experience and perspective to share. Today, we're just going to be diving into my adoption process. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of history on myself and my adoption, and then we're going to dive into a bunch of your guys' questions. I posted an Instagram story asking you guys to send in questions for me about adoption, and let me just say, y'all delivered. I was really surprised. There were hundreds of questions that you guys had left, and I was really surprised to see just what positive things people had to say about it. We're going to start today's episode off with me giving you an overarching view of my adoption. My name is Julia Bedell. I'm 22 years old, and I've lived in Massachusetts for the past 21 years of my life. But it wasn't always like that. I was born in Jiangxi, China, and I was adopted at 11 months old by my beautiful parents, Michael and Christine. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, I can insert a photo here. I am so grateful every single day with the amazing opportunity in life that they've provided me with. I just feel so lucky that we crossed paths. My mom and dad are both Caucasian, and they adopted me around their late 30s. I was also their first child. I know that adoption wasn't always on the forefront of my parents' minds, but just through different experiences that they had, they decided that it was the best option for the two of them. Also, when I was adopted, my parents traveled with a group of families who were also from the United States, and a lot of them actually lived in Massachusetts because I think they were going through a specific agency. So it's really cool because all the girls that I was adopted with, I'm still in touch with a handful of them, and we're all around the same age, and our families are still in touch. So it really is an amazing community to be a part of. Just have girls who went through a very similar experience, who are around the same age as you, and how we're all just doing such different things, but we're still able to come together at the end of the day because we have this shared experience with each other. My legal birthday is October 17th, 2002. I do know that our birthdays are estimated, so I'm not sure how accurate that actually is. I mean, it had to be pretty accurate because I wasn't adopted that old, so I know that it's not years off, but it may be months or days off, which is kind of crazy to think about because since I'm an October baby on paper, if they had estimated my birthday a little bit sooner, I would have been a whole grade older than I am now. Like, I would have been out of college a year and 6 months ago. The really cool thing about all of the girls that I was adopted with, I call them my sisters, and that's what the parents always referred to us as. A lot of their birthdays are in September and October, I believe. So we're all only a couple months apart in age, and it's just been so cool. Like, I literally went to college a 15-minute drive away from one of my sisters, aka one of the girls that I was adopted with, which is just so cool to think about. I also have a younger sister. Her name is Peilon. She was also adopted from China, but from a different province. So I was born in Jiangxi. She was born in Shanghai. We're both 100% Chinese, and it is an interesting experience that I've had because I've both been adopted and have been on the adoption side. And I just want to say I'm so grateful literally every single day that I was adopted. The amount of opportunities and experiences and just being so loved and raised the way I have been raised is such a privilege, and I'm truly so grateful that I crossed my parents' path because I know technically with when you have your own biological children, that's still in itself a miracle, but to be born on the opposite side of the world and to be put up for adoption and to have the luck of my current parents being matched with me and just having the life that I have truly feels like a miracle twice over again. It feels like it was a miracle that I was born and then that I was adopted by my parents. Being adopted has truly provided me with so many different opportunities and objectively a way better quality of life. I'm so grateful for the opportunity that I have in life. My parents, my sister, everything that adoption has given me has overall just been so positive. I have nothing bad to say about it. Although I've gotten so many amazing opportunities and experiences from from being adopted, there are a lot of other things that have really shaped me as a person. And I'm not saying that they're all bad. They're not. But there are just certain things that I encountered in life or experienced that were just kind of part of the journey and part of being an adopted child that not many people speak about. I mean, maybe they do, but I haven't seen it too much. So I knew that I definitely wanted to shed some light on that in this podcast episode and just really walk you guys through my entire experience and what it's been like for the past 22 years. Certain things like not looking like your family or even your extended family, not looking like a majority of the kids around you, and not fully understanding why because your parents look like them, not knowing your medical history or your biological parents' medical history, all things that aren't necessarily bad but just different, and topics that I wanted to touch on in today's episode. So I feel like you guys are pretty caught up to speed. Now I'm going to be diving into all of your questions. Y'all did really good. I was looking through them. I posted on my Instagram and my YouTube community tab. If you guys want to chance to be featured in future podcast episodes, please check those out because I'm always trying to engage you guys and just involve you in things that I'm creating. So if you want to be able to send in a question for the next podcast episode, you should follow me on Instagram at _Julia Bedell and subscribe to this YouTube channel so you can stay looped in. Let's get cozy because it's going to be a long one. I have like 20 questions written down. The first question is, why were you put up for adoption? So I don't fully know, and neither do my parents. From what we understand is that they have a very strict one-child policy in China, and a lot of the times it's more favorable to have a boy. I'm not super caught up on how the government works in China and how those policies have evolved over time, but my understanding of it is I probably was put up for adoption because they just couldn't afford to have another girl, and they probably wanted a boy, or they already had a boy. So I just wasn't favorable for them, and they didn't want to commit a federal crime by keeping me. So they probably thought that it was the best option to put me up for adoption to hopefully give me a better future than I would have had with them. My whole adoption process happened very early on, so I really don't remember a lot of it. I just know what I've been told, and also going with my parents to adopt my sister. So I've seen it on the other side, but I don't really have a lot of like ruminating trauma around it. This was a very popular question. It was, do you want to meet your birth parents? Have you tried? If you could, would you? The answer is yes. I would love to meet my biological parents. It's not something that I need to do to feel complete in life, but it is something that if I was presented with the opportunity, I would love to do because I feel like there is such a special connection there of seeing someone who shares the same blood as you, like literally the same genetics, who created you. I'm sure we share features, characteristics. I would love to sit down and have a conversation with them, but that's just not realistic. I don't know who my parents are. I don't know where they are. I don't even know if they're close to the province that I was adopted from. I have no history on them, no connection with them. It's pretty unrealistic for me to get in contact with them. So I've kind of just not given up on it, but I've just kind of come to peace with it, that I probably won't meet my biological parents, and that's okay. I am perfectly happy. I'm living an amazing life, and I'm so grateful for everything that I have. So I don't really feel the need to have to meet my biological parents to feel super complete and fulfilled. Other people were also asking about if I have biological siblings or relatives. I'm sure I have relatives. I probably have siblings. I, once again, would love to meet them if I was presented with the opportunity, but just very unlikely with the position that I'm in. They didn't have much history on me. I think I was literally just dropped off in front of an orphanage. That's normally how it goes for a lot of people. So I don't really have any biological history of my relatives, my medical history. It's kind of all a mystery. This was also a very common question. When your parents told you were adopted, were you upset or mad? When did they tell you? So I know that every parent handles this situation differently, but my parents were always very open with me that I was adopted. They are not my biological parents, but obviously they love me endlessly. That doesn't define their love for me or care for me. And that's just always how it was in my family. So I really don't remember a time where I didn't know that I was adopted. I mean, it's pretty easy for me to put two and two together because my mom literally has blonde hair and both my parents are very white appearing. So it was no secret that I was not biologically related to them. And I think because they were so transparent with that and they never felt like it was a secret or it was like a taboo subject that people needed to like walk on eggshells around, I've always been very comfortable talking about my adoption and the fact that I am adopted and that my parents are not my biological parents. It never bothered me. And I feel like when certain people ask me if I'm adopted or about my parents, they think that they're offending me. And I genuinely don't feel offended at all. I understand how it can be a little bit of a touchy subject for certain people, but I think just the way that my parents went about communicating it with me and telling me about it and just always keeping me involved in that conversation really helped with my relationship and identity of being adopted. Did you ever feel different from other kids? Did they make you feel different when growing up? For the most part, I will say that I didn't encounter too many problems with being adopted and also just being a person of color. The town that I grew up in and the schooling systems that I was in, elementary school, middle school, and high school, were private Catholic schools. So I think just the demographic was very white, and that doesn't always have a direct correlation to the way that they would make me feel, but I do know that I had a handful of instances where there would be comments made about the way that I look, who my parents are, and also just like assignments that we would do in class that used to make me feel a little bit uncomfortable. Also, I did gymnastics pretty much my entire life up until recently, so those teams also were predominantly white and there weren't a lot of minorities in those groups, and that's just kind of the way it was for me when I grew up. That's nothing to say against my parents or any of the people that I did school or gymnastics alongside. It's more just like it's a fact of the matter thing. So I'm not targeting or pointing any fingers at anyone. For example, I remember having an experience in gymnastics actually when I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, maybe 10, where I was just having a conversation with my teammates and they were just trying to understand like the whole adoption process. I think I had referred to the girls who I was adopted with as my sisters, and the other girls around me who were my age just weren't really understanding that. They didn't really get it. It was a little confusing because the way my parents had always presented it to me was the girls that I was adopted with, these are your sisters. Like, that's just what we referred to each other as. And I get it. On paper, biologically, we are not sisters. We're not legal sisters. We're not blood related sisters. Like, in no world were we sisters. But my parents just thought that was a really cute way to kind of bring us together and make us feel like kind of a unit because we were all adopted together. All of the parents who had adopted us are all still pretty close. So that was just what I referred to them as. The girls that I was adopted with, these are my sisters. And I remember when I was at gymnastics practice one day, some of the girls were being a little bit mean about it. I think they more so were just trying to understand. And nobody's at fault here, I get it. We were all children, but I do know that it made me feel kind of weird and uncomfortable because I was like, yeah, like my sisters. And it's crazy because one of my sister's birthdays is only like a couple weeks apart from mine, which wasn't a lie, but I think there was a lot of confusion with the term sister and the fact that I was adopted because these girls were like, what are you saying? There's absolutely no way that she could be your sister. Like biologically, obviously, it takes 9 months to make a baby. So it would make no sense that someone related to me would have been born only a few weeks after, a few weeks before. So I totally get what they were trying to say, but it definitely came off in a way that made me feel kind of uncomfortable. And I think that was my first moment that I'd realized like, ooh, I'm a little bit different here. I remember that these girls were actually a little bit older than me, so they were kind of girls that I'd looked up to, and they were cool girls in my eyes. Like, I wanted to be just like them, so I cared a lot what they thought of me. And I remember just when I had this moment about talking about my sisters, and they were kind of looking at me like I was a little crazy, it didn't make me feel great. And I still remember that experience to this day, and it's not something that's at the forefront of my mind every single time. But it definitely was interesting. That was one experience. And then in school, I definitely did have a handful of other experiences where people would just make racist jokes, you know? And I don't even know how directly tied that was to adoption. I think that was just people being racist towards an Asian person. I'm 100% Chinese. I took a 23andMe, and like the proof is in the pudding. Like I am 100% Chinese, and I look Asian. And there's nothing that I can do about that. And there's nothing that I would want to change about that. I just want to make that clear. But people definitely made me feel a little bit outcasted for that when I was younger. I remember we were reading this book in middle school, and there was this kid that I had a crush on. And the book, I don't fully remember what it was talking about, but it was saying, I think there was a metaphor between someone Asian having a foxtail, or the foxtail symbolizing something that tied back into Asian culture. I don't know. But I remember this kid had kicked me under the table, and I was like, oh, it's my time to shine. Like, I don't know, is he gonna like slip me a note or something? Like, I was excited, you know? I remember my crush kicked me under the table and was like, do you have a foxtail? Like, let me see it. I didn't even know what to say to that. I instantly felt my body tighten up and almost feel like my fight or flight activate. That comment made me really uncomfortable and also just really insecure and self-conscious about how other people were noticing that I looked different from them. Because a lot of the time when I made that realization that, oh, like, my parents don't really look like me and I don't really look like my peers, but no one really notices because my parents have always treated me as an equal and they've never highlighted that ethnically we're different, you know? And not in a bad way. It's just they genuinely just always treated me like their own, like their blood. So I never really thought of it that much. And I liked to think that my peers and the kids that I was growing up with didn't really notice as much either. But when I had experiences like this where it was very apparent that my peers were acknowledging that I did look different and that I was different from them, it kind of made me feel a little bit like an outcast and like I didn't truly fit in to any group. I also had another experience in high school where some kid, I remember it was so early in the morning, I was exhausted. I think it was like 6:30 or 7 in the morning. I had to come early because I had AP Bio Lab. I was so tired. I just didn't have the energy to deal with this at all. It was the peak of COVID. Obviously, when you're wearing a mask, the only thing people can really see on your face is the upper half of your face. And I remember walking out of the bathroom stall and this girl just coming up to me and giving me like the nastiest up-down look and then just screaming konnichiwa on my face and then leaving the bathroom. I literally didn't know how to respond to that. That's the thing. A lot of these instances that I've been in, I just don't know how to respond because it just leaves you so shocked, genuinely gagged, that you don't even know how to respond. So you're not even quick enough on your feet to be able to respond. First of all, it was 7 in the morning. Second of all, why did I just get hate crimed in my high school bathroom? Why? Also, I'm not even Japanese. Like so many things were wrong with that it's just crazy. Up until college, I wasn't surrounded by many Asian people who weren't from an also adopted family. Like I had friends growing up who were Chinese, but they were also adopted. So they grew up in a white household and they were very similar to me. So these relationships were really great because we had a lot to relate on. And it was just that shared experience that kind of brought us together and brought our parents together. But I didn't have a lot of friends up until college who were Asian and grew up in Asian households. So that was a little bit different. I remember when I first got to college, I felt kind of weird. Like, not necessarily about my adoption, but being adopted, I always felt too white for the Asian people and too Asian for the white people. I know on paper, ethnically, I don't have an ounce of white blood in my body, but because I grew up with white parents, culturally, there's just a handful of things where I think I had a different cultural upbringing than other Asians did, where I kind of almost felt like an imposter in these communities because I couldn't relate to having super strict parents growing up. Like my parents weren't really like a stereotypical Asian parent. They raised me the way they felt was best, and that was a lot more like a stereotypical Caucasian upbringing. I did start to get my footing in college with other Asian people, specifically other Chinese people. I dated 2 guys. One of them was full Chinese, one of them was half Vietnamese, half Chinese, and I have a bunch of friends who are Chinese and Asian and Wasian and Blasian, and I loved brown so much because of the diversity, but that's a whole nother thing that I would talk about in a separate episode. But as I've gotten older, and especially in the past 4 years, I kind of got my footing and my comfortability in my own culture and in the fact that I'm adopted. So that comfortability and confidence definitely came with age and took time to evolve, and I'm still not fully there, but I definitely think it is a lot better of a position that I'm in now than I was in maybe 10 years ago. How did you connect with your Asian culture? So I kind of already talked about this, but I connected the most with my Asian culture through other people. There were certain things and experiences that were very authentic to Chinese culture, to Asian culture, that I had just not really experienced because I wasn't in that environment. And that's not a dig at my parents. My parents did an amazing job raising me. I'm very proud of who I am as a person. But obviously my parents didn't grow up Asian. They didn't grow up in Asian culture. So when it comes to things like eating super authentic Asian dishes and learning about certain seasonings and different things that they'll do and different traditions and holidays and all of that, it took more time for me to learn about it. And a lot of the times I learned about it through other people. So through different people that I had dated, through friends that I had made along the way, I definitely was slowly exposed to these things. And now I definitely do feel a lot more tied to my culture and to Asian culture overall. And I love it so much. Like, it's something that I'm so proud about. And that makes me really happy because there was definitely one point in my life where I wouldn't have really felt proud to be Asian, which is really sad for me to say. It's just the way I felt. Asian influences growing up. Okay, so like I said, I wasn't surrounded by a bunch of Asian people, Asian culture, and people who grew up with Asian parents in my life. So a lot of the people who I got kind of influence from were people on social media. I felt really comfortable watching my fam's videos. I love Ashley, even though she's technically Wasian. Caroline Manning, she's also technically Wasian. The Ha sisters. Michelle Choi. I really love her content. Remy Cruz, a lot of different Asian creators that just kind of made me feel a lot more comfortable in my skin, and just people that I would look up to, and kind of just, it felt safe. It felt safe, and I really enjoyed using social media as a good outlet to connect with my culture also. I also learned a lot about different Asian cultures just through social media and through being online. Is the adoption process for same-sex couples more challenging than heterosexual couples? I'm not fully educated on this, but unfortunately, I would say probably. I think it really depends on where you're planning to adopt from and what their culture is like there. I know in some cultures it is a lot less common for same-sex marriage or same-sex partners to exist, and therefore they might be a little bit more discriminatory towards same-sex couples. I'm not super educated on this, so definitely do your research, but I think just knowing society and how some countries work differently, I think it definitely depends on where you're trying to adopt and how their policies are in that country as to how lenient or easy it would be to adopt a child as a same-sex couple versus a heterosexual couple. Was it hard adapting to a new family and surroundings? Honestly, no, because I was adopted so young. The life that I lived was the only life that I knew of, so it didn't bother me at all. How was it being raised in a white household? How does it feel to have parents that don't look like you? Honestly, it was great. I don't have any complaints. Like I said earlier, I'm very proud of the way that my parents raised me. I think they did a great job, and I'm very proud of the person that I've become because of them. Living in a white household like that, it definitely has shaped some of the things that I do, some of the things that I like, but overall, they always encouraged me to be very open-minded and think for myself and do what I want to do. My parents not looking like me also doesn't really bother me very much because, once again, it's all I've ever known. I do know that in middle school, some school assignments would kind of feel a little bit weird to me because they would be doing a family tree, or they would be talking about genes and how genes are passed down in biology. Sometimes these assignments were a little bit awkward because they'd be asking, what traits did you get from your parents? Or what traits did you get from your grandparents? And all of this stuff that's very biological and that most kids in class did experience. I remember those assignments were a little bit awkward and uncomfortable for me, but I mean, my teachers were always very accommodating and no one really made me feel bad about it. I think it was more just my own insecurity and feeling of kind of being different or different from the others. For the most part, besides that, having parents that didn't look like me didn't bother me at all. Do people ever ask you why you have Caucasian parents? Does it ever get annoying? No. I don't really care when people ask. I mean, most people put two and two together when they see two Caucasian parents with two Chinese children, but it doesn't really bother me as long as people are respectful about it. I don't care if they ask, are you adopted? As long as they are respectful about the way that they're asking and treating my sister, me, and my parents, I don't really mind. Weirdly, some people are very blunt about it. Not even about the fact that you're adopted. Some people who are interested in adoption would ask my parents, how much is she? How much is that? It's just seems a little transactional. And I just think sometimes the way people go about asking questions is a little crazy. But besides that, doesn't really bother me very much. I kind of already answered this question, but growing up, did you face any kind of discrimination or racism? How did you cope? I already answered the first half of this question, but as for coping, I think I truly started coping and healing when I met more people that looked like me and more people that weren't white, basically. Being able to talk to people in a minority community is very important and special, in my opinion. Everyone has different experiences based off the way they look, the way they were raised, X, Y, and Z. There's so many different variable things that make our experiences as humans different. And one of the things is looking different and just how that will impact the way some people will treat you or speak to you or act around you. I think the way that I coped the most was being able to speak to other people about it and realize that I'm not the only one that feels this way. And I'm not saying that discrimination or racism is okay under any circumstance. It did bring me a sense of comfort knowing that I'm not the only one that feels this way, and it does suck, but other people go through it too, and it just made me feel less alone. Just the feeling of being less alone definitely helped cope with different experiences that I had and heal from them and be able to forgive. Do you ever wonder what your life would be like if you weren't adopted? I do sometimes. I don't wish I lived that life by any means. A fun fact is the province that I was born in is actually in southern China. So they do a lot of farming down there. It's very hot. Probably one of the reasons why I tan super easily. I probably would have been working on a farm every single day. And God just knew that was not the path for me. I do wonder how different my life would have been if I wasn't adopted, or even if I was adopted by a different family. But I don't think about it super often because it didn't happen. Are you happy with the life you were given? Absolutely, 100% yes. I couldn't be more grateful, honestly. I feel like I've gotten everything I could have ever dreamed of and more. I was adopted into the most loving and welcoming and amazing family who provided me truly with everything and loved me so unconditionally that you wouldn't even think that I wasn't their own. Would do it a million times over again. Do you have other adopted friends? Yes, I do. A handful of the girls that I grew up with and I was friends with were also adopted because my mom was friends with their parents, and that was just something they had in common. And then I would hang out with their kids who were also adopted. So it was cool to be able to be friends with people who are also adopted. And then on the Brown gymnastics team, weirdly enough, a handful of us were adopted from China. So that was a very happy accident, but it was super cool being able to meet teammates and be on the same team as people who were also adopted from the same country as me. It definitely is nice to have that shared experience with people. Do you identify with the culture of your adopted parents or a biological culture? I'd say a mix of both. I think my upbringing is part of what shapes me, and my ethnic culture is another part of what shapes me. And I think that that's something so special and so unique to me and other people who have a similar experience. There are certain parts of me that people would pin as being whitewashed, and I get it. I love Brandy Melville. I love a good Stanley Cup tumbler. I love my Uggs. There are certain things that people will pin as being very whitewashed, but I don't really care because I know what I like, and that's all that matters. There's other things that I really enjoy. I'd say the biggest connection that I feel to my culture is the food, which might sound a little bit weird, but I love Chinese food. I love traditional Chinese food. I love all Asian foods. I love a lot of different kinds of foods, so I don't know how good of an answer this is, but definitely a mix of both. And I think also from dating people who grew up in very traditional Chinese and Asian households, I was also exposed to more of the culture through that, which I'm very grateful for, and those were just amazing experiences to have. I'd say it's a good split. Would you want to adopt? I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be closed off to it at all. I haven't even met my future husband yet, so that would have to be a very in-depth conversation with the both of us. But I would be willing to have my own children if I was physically able, but I would never be closed off to adopting. I think that it is an amazing way to give someone a better life, to give them almost a second chance. That's how I feel about me being adopted. So 100% I would adopt, and it wouldn't just have to be from China. I honestly would adopt from anywhere. 100% yes. Did you ever at some point feel white? Yeah, I did. I honestly did. I think for the longest time, weirdly enough, up until the point that I had that first interaction with that kid who had made that comment about me being Chinese, I think I just thought I blended in a lot more than I actually did, if that makes sense. I knew that I didn't have blonde hair and that I didn't have blue eyes like my mom. I can see, but I thought I just was the same as everyone else and maybe had some different features, but I don't think I fully acknowledged that I was Chinese until I had that first encounter with that kid who had made that comment about the book that we were reading. That was my first come to Jesus of, oh wait, I actually look different from y'all and y'all notice. I'm not flying as incognito as I thought. For a while there, I definitely did think that, not that I was white, but I just looked a lot more similar to other people, or I just didn't think that they noticed that I looked different. Have you ever been back to your birthplace? I have not. I've been back to China, but I've never been back to Jiangxi. I went back to China when we had adopted my sister. I don't even know when that was. 2009, 2010 maybe. So that was my first time back to China, but we didn't go back to my province. And 2 summers ago, I went to Hong Kong. So I have been back to China, just not my specific province. What is the common reaction when people figure out you're adopted? I think a lot of people are a little bit surprised, but also not surprised, because if you see my parents, you can kind of put the pieces together. It is weird, when people figure out that I'm adopted, I almost feel them tighten up a little bit, not in a bad way, in a way of they don't want to offend me, or they now feel like they're walking on eggshells around me a little bit. For some people, I think that they perceive it as almost an offensive topic, which I personally don't take any offense to talking about being adopted. The fact that I am adopted, nothing about it offends or triggers me, but I know that everyone's experience and story is different, so it may justify that kind of behavior. But I have felt that a lot of people tend to tighten up when they're oh, you're adopted. I mean, yeah, of course, yeah. you know, like it's like weird. Like I catch them like stumbling over their words almost, because they're like trying to find the next thing to say to not offend me or my parents. So interesting. Do you ever doubt your parents' love for you? Not for a single second. My parents love me just like I'm their own. Nothing about the way that my parents treat me, have raised me, have made me feel different from them. They truly have shown me what unconditional love is and feels like. I'm so grateful for them. And I think it's also just a good testament to show that in order to have that relationship, you do not need to be blood related. You do not need to have any sort of relation to a person to love them this deeply. So I think if anything, it almost feels more like love than it would have felt if they were my biological parents, because not that there's a reason for them to not love me, but just the way they love me and not having a specific reason as to why they should love me because I'm their blood makes it feel even stronger to me. Did you feel out of place visiting Asia? Honestly, no. I honestly felt like I was flying the most incognito I've ever flown in my life because a lot of people in Asia are Asian. So it didn't really bother me. I definitely know that I looked like a tourist. I didn't really feel out of place. I mean, one of the other girls that I went to Asia with last year was also adopted. Wait, yeah, that's crazy. When I was on the gymnastics team, it was me and 3 other girls who were also adopted from China. That's crazy. Crazy coincidence, the pipeline of adopted Chinese baby to D1 gymnastics pipeline. Do you ever feel weird about having semi-older parents? It doesn't really bother me. I mean, obviously I do worry about the fact that they're older, and it does make me sad sometimes because I just wish they were younger just so I could have more time with them. I'm not saying that like they're gonna die early, knock on wood. But obviously, if I could turn back the clocks and make them 50 right now, I would prefer that because that would mean they were only 50 and they weren't 60. So, I mean, it is what it is. It doesn't bother me that much. But selfishly, I wish they were as young as they could be right now. Did you ever feel like your parents didn't have the right to discipline you? No, I always respected them a lot. And because they were the only parents that I'd ever known, I'd never been disciplined by anyone else besides them. So it just kind of was my norm and I never really questioned it. I think it could definitely be different for older children or people who were older when they were adopted, because there was that time in their life that they probably were disciplined by someone else other than their current parents. But not for me. I don't remember anything before Christine and Mike. Are you and Palon related? No, we're not related. So legally we're sisters, but biologically we are not. She was adopted from a different province than mine, and there's no blood relation between the two of us. Just the fact that we're both from China is the only thing we have in common. Did your parents change you and your sister's biological names, and if so, why? So they changed my biological name. I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, but when I was adopted from Jiangxi, my full name was Feng Zhengri. I don't know if I'm getting the pronunciation of that right, but I think one of them stands for the orphanage name. One of them's like your name, last name. I'm not fully sure the structure of it, but I do know that when I was adopted, my name was Feng Zhengri. So my parents did not keep that name for me. I was only 11 months old, so once again, I didn't know anything different. They always resonated with the name Julia, so my full name is Julia Catherine Bedell. It's just the way the cookie crumbled. But my sister, we had a name picked out for her. She was supposed to be Elizabeth, and currently her legal name is Elizabeth because that's just what my parents filed on paper. But when we adopted her, we realized that she responded a lot better to the name Palon, and she just felt more connected to it. So that's just what we've called her. She's always been Palon to us. That's what she's called in her classes. A lot of the times when she gets packages in the mail, anything besides her legal name being Elizabeth, and I think she actually wants to change that soon, is her Chinese name. My sister was 3.5 when we adopted her, so I think she felt a lot more connected and tied to her pre-adoption name. So my parents just decided to keep it. Final question. What was it like meeting your little sister? I'll actually have to take her on the podcast to talk about this because it's actually such a funny story. When I first met my sister, I loved her. I was obsessed with her. I was like, she's so cute. My family's on another vacation and I just made another friend. Mind you, I had grown up an only child for the first 8 years of my life. So I never knew what it was like to share, to have a sibling, to have anything but all of my parents' love and attention 24/7. So when we had gone to China, my mom had already kind of talked to me about, you're going to get a sister, and she had tried her best to explain it to me, but I just don't think it really registered for me mentally until she was boarding the plane to go home with us. And then I was like, wait a minute, she's coming home with us? I thought this was just a friend that I made on vacation. And then when we got back to the airport, Logan Airport in Boston, and my entire family was there waiting because it was her welcome home party, obviously. And everyone was rushing up to her and saying hi to her and giving her all the love and affection. I was like, oh, pause. pause. What is going on? I was not a happy camper for a while. It definitely was a huge adjustment for me learning what it was like to have a sibling. And also, it was weird because she wasn't a newborn baby. So the way that my parents had like talked to me about it was like, she can play with you and you guys can do stuff together, because she was already almost 4 years old when we adopted her and I was 8. So there's a 4-year age gap between the two of us. But I was under the impression that she could do gymnastics with me. We could play with my dolls. She would be able to do all of this stuff with me. But obviously she had just come out of the orphanage for the first 3.5 years of her life. So she was a little bit malnourished, couldn't quite keep up with my gymnastics. So I was feeling a little bit disappointed when we first adopted her, because she just, it sounds terrible, just wasn't living up to my expectations, which sounds so bad. But that's just the way that I felt, unfortunately. Over the years, we definitely did get a lot closer. I adjusted to having a sibling and learning how to share my things, learning how to share the attention, learning the dynamic of having a baby sister. And I am so grateful that my parents adopted a second child, and the fact that I get to have a little sister, because she's my favorite person in the world. She's my mini me. I love her so much. It's incredible. And having the opportunity and the experience of being able to be an older sister has been so great. I think for both of our developments, I think my sister and I talk about this a lot, but I think I was meant to be an older sister, and I think my sister was meant to be a younger sister. It's just the way the cookie crumbled, and I think that they were the perfect positions for us, because my sister is just so little sister coded, and vice versa. I love guiding her, mentoring her, helping her with things. She loves asking me for help, and I used to be so mean. I used to make her grab my things. Like, I used to literally make her play fetch for me. This is so bad. And get my things when I was too lazy to go get them. So Pay, if you're watching this, I love you so much. Thank you for being the best and most tolerant little sister ever. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this podcast episode. I had so much fun sharing this experience with you. I thought there was no better topic to start on than adoption, because it truly is my origin story. That's how my life started. That's how I'm living this life right now. That's how I'm sitting in this seat talking to you guys in this moment. So I just feel like it was such a pivotal moment in my life that I had to share it with you guys. And it was the perfect thing to open up my first topic episode on. This was a lot of talking from me, but I actually really enjoyed it. It felt therapeutic to just be able to sit and talk with you guys. I'm sorry that the lighting keeps changing so much if you're watching this on YouTube. It's because it was raining out earlier and it was a gloomy day, and I was super excited to snuggle up in bed, and now the sun's out and it's glaring through my window. It's kind of annoying, but feeling good. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. To all of my fellow people who were adopted or just listening to this podcast to learn more about adoption or an adoptee's story, I hope you enjoyed. I love you guys so much. For all my fellow adoptees, you are so seen and heard. I definitely would be open to doing more episodes on this, incorporating my parents, incorporating my sister, because we technically were all a part of the adoption process. So I think it would be really interesting to get different perspectives on it. I'm realizing a podcast is like such a perfect thing for me, because I love talking a lot. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Please comment down below any other questions that you have about adoption, future episode topics, whatever you want. I'm very open. If you're listening to this on Spotify, please make sure to give it a 5-star rating if you enjoyed. Your feedback and support really means the world to me and makes such a difference in my growth. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for hanging around and choosing to be here today. This was such a fun podcast episode for me to film, and I already feel so much closer to you guys, even after just this one episode. I love you guys so much, and I'll be sure to see y'all in the next one. Bye, guys.